So, aloha everyone. Welcome to this global digital room. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I know for Kumu it's pretty early. It's 8 a.m. over there in Hawaii. So thank you all for being on this call. Thank you all for having an interest in learning about Ho'oponopono. I first met Kumu, I don't know how many years ago at this point, but I was immediately inspired by his connection with language and his connection with the island of Hawaii, which I had traveled to when I was at first 23 years old and continued to come back year after year after year. And it was actually the first place that I ever felt home. I felt a connection within my heart in such a deep way that actually the first time that I left the islands, I was crying on the airplane as we were flying away. There were rainbows, there were whales. I mean, it was just like the scene was you can't really make it up. And within this, the title of our talk today is Ho'oponopono and the Hawaii within, right? So there was something about touching into that space of the heart that that being with the islands enabled me to do without even me having the contextual comprehension of the depth of the name of Hawaii even, or never mind all of these cultural practices and life ways rooted in aloha that the people embody. And when I met Kumu, I learned more from him in an hour about the Hawaiian language than I learned in like 8 years of being on the island. And I was like, I don't know like who you are, but I want to learn with you. And please, like, I would like to continue to learn. And we've been able to develop a really beautiful relationship, and I'm really happy to be able to connect him here with all of you, so that we can tap into these ways of connection, these ways of alignment, these ways of living a good way. You know, there's a big differentiation between the good life and the good living, and these are ways of good living. So, like that, without getting too far ahead of myself, I just want to say aloha kakahiaka kumu. Good morning. Thank you for being here with us, and you can introduce yourself better than I ever could. So, mahalo for being here and for sharing
Well,
your wisdom and your life with us, and the wisdom of the islands too.
yeah, mahalo nui, Ryan. Thank you so much for that introduction and welcome. And mahai to your group and to you for creating this space today and allowing me to come and share some of my kupuna, my elders, what we say, mana'o and ike, their thoughts and their wisdom around this particular discipline called ho'oponopono. It's important we pronounce it properly because in most languages, especially in Hawaiian, if even pronunciation can call upon a different response because our language is spiritual. It's a spiritual language, as Ryan was getting into. But with that in mind, I would say aloha mai kako, aloha to everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you and your ancestors for leading you and bringing us to this point of convergence that we're all meeting on our individual and collective paths. If I may, Ryan, I'd like to open with a thought that brings us all together, not just physically, but spiritually. Again, using the frequency and the energy of our island. I like to say island Earth, all our island, yeah. But from Hawaii, that part of the island. E holukuno no ke kino ame ka ohane. E mālama pono ka manao, ke ola ke kino I kamana avauloa. Aloha, aloha, aloha. You know, in those words from our kupuna, our ancestors, it speaks to the notion of unity, lokahi, solidarity, coming together. E holukuno no ke kino ame ka ohane speaks to the idea of unifying one's mind, the body, and spirit. It is in that union that connection, that we now become one, lokai, singular, not to oneself, but to all things. We become one and connected. The mind, the spirit, they become, as the word you use, Ryan, aligned. But not just an internal alignment, but an alignment with all things, and most importantly, the source, creator, which we in Hawaii ancestrally refer to the E, the letter I, as in the I or the I am. Yeah, it is an ancestral acknowledgement of that singular energy that shows up in many ways, in many faces. Yeah. That's the first part of that invocation. The second part, it's to care for, nurture, protect, in service that union for self as well as for others. Because when you make that alignment, you're not just aligning again with yourself, but source, but all things connected to source, which is everyone else. And so the prayer, if there is one, the invocation, the call, the acknowledgement is one that we're all connected. And that the hope is that we're not just connected for the moment, but what it acknowledges that we're connected through all time, time being something that we have created. But in the concept of the spiritual time where there is no time, we're all connected. So if that's the case, then let's be mindful, heartful, spiritful, and conscious and mindful of one another. For as I do to myself, I do to you. As I do to you, I do to myself. And this is an acknowledgement in the process of ho'oponopono, the making of right, of bringing things into alignment. When one's outer world seems disconnected, dis-ease, and in disorder, it is a reflection of what's going on in our inner world. It's an inside job. For everything that we're experiencing, good, bad, or indifferent, we are experiencing through the physical senses of sight, sound, touch, etc. But those are just receptors. It's allowing us to experience that internally and defining it internally. It's not the external world that's defining it. It's our internal reception of that external stimulus, that world. The sounds, the sights, the tastes, the movements, the colors, the lights. When we acknowledge that, we then begin to realize that we are just a reflection. And I don't know myself, according to my kupuna and my life experiences. I don't know myself until I know you. I don't know myself except through the reflections. So in Ho'oponopono acknowledges that to be pono, to be in alignment, that first thing I talked about, it's important to be to recognize when you're misaligned. Many of us live a life misaligned, thinking that's pono, that's the way it should be, simply because we have not experienced what is pono. And when we do, we realize that we've been out of alignment, and then proceed through our lives until the next moment when we realize that we're no longer in the flow of the stream, but sitting on the riverbank wondering what happened. And so this principle of pono, to be in alignment, to be proper, to be correct, some might even say righteous as a definition, is the way we in Hawaii, and I say Hawaii, acknowledge this ancestral and this long spiritual connection, regardless of one's ethnicity or culture. When I say Hawaii, that's just the lens that just happens to be the experience through which this wonderful process and technique of healing has revealed itself and is now being shared around the world. That's to say and to acknowledge that everywhere around this island called Earth, there are practices and methods by which people have employed to reconnect, to realign. So today's sharing is really just to say, this is how we've done it. And for those of us that have forgotten or become disconnected from our particular places in the mana, the energy, the relationship to those places, as well as the ancestral knowledge of those places, simply because we're moving around so much, that I mahalo, I thank and express gratitude to my kupuna elders, in particular, Kahuna La'aulapa'au Morrnah Simeona, for grabbing me by the ear and flicking me on the head when she recognized that this head was empty, this heart could be filled with his ancestral wisdom and thought. So I mahalo them, as well as all the other elders that took me in over the years, so that I could be here to share with you. And I frame that by saying, I subscribe to this thought or idea that unless it's a lived experience, it's just a claim. And so this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, my commitment to you is that my sharing comes from my lived experience and the experiences that I've shared with others and they with me. And what I have to share with you is not a claim that I either have not experienced or can't speak directly to, right? So that is my commitment to you. I also want to make room and space for questions for those of you that may have any at the end. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you to kind of guide me to that, when we have maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes around there.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll save 10 minutes at the end for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that introduction actually begins to reveal what Ryan was saying, our so-called title, what we call the AO, the call, the kahea for today, which is it's Ho'oponopono and the Hawaii we're in. And I hinted at it, this notion of recognizing that it's all an inside job, that pono is a sense as much as it is a feeling. It's a sense. And as we all know, a sense and a feeling is an internal thing. It's not an external thing. Yeah, I might feel things on my arms, but it is my internal sensing that allows me to translate what I just felt physically, externally. But if there's a disconnect between my external and my internal processing, my awareness, my recognition, the memories that tell me what I just felt is hot, cold, good, bad, or instant. But it is that definition, is that memory that's important. So what does that lead us to do? It suggests then that it's not the externalities that define us, but how we process that information from the externalities. In a certain way, if I allow the externalities of my world to define who I am, then I am essentially a victim of those externalities. The external world is defining how I am internally. If I have to wait for someone else to apologize in order for me to feel comfortable, if I need the world around me to acknowledge who I am or what I am a victim of that external world. Those are people, the environment, everything. Because at some point in time, I've set up a system of dependence and reliance on those external things. Ho'oponopono, as it was presented and reframed by Aunty Morrnah back in the early 70s, was really what she called it was self-identity through Ho'oponopono. The means by which we can all reconnect to our true identities as we, in collaboration with other spirits and souls and identities, primarily the grand creator, if you would, the source, that we entered into an agreement of how our identities, our intelligence would be shared with others for their good as well as our own. And that's a hint to one of the mantras and or the aspirations when we get to Ho'oponopono, which is really to be in the right place at the right time for my good and for the good of others. In other words, Ho'oponopono isn't something we do to people. It's not something I do to others. But it's an internal process that begins to shift my internal understanding, connection, and awareness. But it's rooted in an understanding that this mana, this life energy, comes from the aina, comes from the space around us, our places. And when we can connect to those places, that mana, that life energy, creates a union, a communion with that place. So regardless of what I say, I am connected. Now that's my way of entering into the understanding that our language, our olelo, we call it olelo Hawai'i, is rooted in the spiritual understanding that every time you utter a sound with intention and with the proper emotion, that you are manifesting, or more probably manifesting, that you are manifesting an experience, an outcome. And so if you're surprised by what's manifesting for you, then the opportunity then is to remember, to reconnect, to remember, to put the members of your internal family, mind, body, and spirit, to remember them, so that when you're dealing with the memories that they each have responsibility for, to present to you, so that we can move through this world in harmony. It's when we are experiencing disharmony, dis-ease, disconnections, and the absence of peace, that's an indication not of what's going on outside, but what's going on inside. Now, don't get me wrong. Things outside can be bad by the definitions that we apply to them. But the question is, why am I experiencing that? What allowed me to be in this place right now, in this moment, to experience what's going on around me that is causing me to behave the way I do? Confidently, in anxiety, fear, anger, whatever that might be. In other words, while those things may be out there, that may be true, especially to everyone else, why am I? What opportunity am I being given by being placed or making choices in my life that allowed me to be here in this place at this moment, at this time, so I can experience you, your words, your thoughts, your experiences, your anxieties? So critical to the Ho'oponopono process and the internal work and the internal prayer that we're living is a simple question, which amounts to another reflection. What is it about me? And I'm going to ask each of you to just utter this silently or with me out loud. Yeah. What is it about me that allows me to see you in a way that bugs me about you? Okay. So let's try that again. Say it with intention. What is it about me that allows me to see and experience you in a way that bothers me, that bugs me, that triggers me about you? Now replace the you with anything. What is it about this tree? What is it about this music? What is it about this song, this food, this gathering, this house, this color? What is it about these things, right? But that you out there. But the me says, what is it about me that's allowing me to experience this around me in a way that I break down and cry, or I feel like I must run and hide, or I have to pick up my sword, or I have, why do I react that way to that? Because the guy next to me is not. Other people who are not in this room are not experiencing this. So something about me is enabling me to experience you and this environment in a way that I behave the way I do. And where did that behavior come from? That's the memory. And so when we are remembering these parts of ourselves, these inner parts, we're now becoming connected to all the outer parts. Again, the outer part doesn't define us, but how we define it then defines us. It's all us. It all comes down to us. Yeah. And in the Hawaiian lexicon, the mo'olelo Hawaii, yeah, each letter, each sound is a spiritual element, the elementals. So whenever we utter these sounds of ah, e, o, or oo with intention and drive that with the various consonants to build the language, we are communing with that spiritual entity and energy. I'm communing with fire when I utter the sound ah. I'm communing with E, the water. I'm communing with the spirit of the human condition in front of me, the oo. Each of those spiritual elements then become part of my spell making, my conjuring, my thoughts and my own emotions. As Aunty Pilahi, one of our kupuna and elders who mentored me as well, would often say, the seed of thought is watered by the emotions of heart. So be careful of what you think and feel, but most importantly, guard your words. For once you utter that sound and express that elemental energy, spirit, and it leaves your niho, your teeth, it's now out in the world. You've given birth to whatever that energy may be, good, bad, or indifferent. And we don't know what the outcome's going to be, but if it's already seeded with negative energy, then the likelihood, like a snowball, it will pick up other negative energies. Right? And so the cautionary note is to always guard your thoughts, guard your words, right? And your emotions. But it first requires us to acknowledge the inner world, that it is an inside job, and that what I'm seeing around me is really an expression of me in the world around me. That I've created this opportunity, this space, in collaboration with others, so that we could have this collective experience as a single spirit. So these are the things that our ancestors understood and employed practices and spiritual principles to allow them to align and to commune with this as well as one another. It's when that communion broke down that we had to develop words to communicate. It's a little different. That's me trying to manipulate the space, manipulate the energy so that you and I can have a meaningful experience rather than just communing and being in that space. And for those of us that have relationships, one-on-one relationships or with groups where there seems to be a resonance, regardless of what one says, that's an experience of communing. That's going out to nature and feeling at home, feeling welcome, and not at risk to them or to yourself. Yeah. This is communing. This is the expression of pono, all driven by and held up by the underlying, perhaps overarching spiritual principle of aloha. This concept of aloha, to leave people whole, to leave a place better than when you found it, to be whole yourself, not in a hole, but together, full, piha, as we say. Aloha piha, to be full with this spirit of gratitude, reciprocity, and acknowledgement. So if there's any time in the world that we ever could use aloha, as well as the principle of ho'oponopono, it might be now. But there is only the now, isn't there? There's only been the now. We have memories that talk about the now 5 years ago, and some of us are anxious about the now 5 years from now in the future. But none of that is real until it actually occurs, the now. So we're dealing in the now, inspired and influenced by the memories of the previous nows, which we're not sure how many, or the anticipated nows that are about to come. But ultimately, it's about now, this moment, which is a very fleeting thing. You can't hold on to it. And so the principle of Ho'oponopono is how to align my time, my moment. And that happens to be an internal thing, not an external thing. You can't hold on to any of this, but you can hold on to the moment internally. That's just a memory. It's a memory that I had, and it's a memory that is about to come. It's one I'm creating. At some point, all we're doing is managing the expectations of memory. And so when we find that our management of that, and we're at misalignment, that I'm physical, spiritual, mentally out of sync, we fortunately have a process that allows us to realign, to come back together, to find that single mindedness again, which I frame as the notion of being centered in self and a little less self-centered. Now that triggers the idea that all of this, everything I'm sharing with you, is rooted in an understanding that I am in the center of the Pacific for all intents and purposes. That Hawaii is in the center of a blue continent, which we all know as the Pacific. It is here in Hawaii that these principles of living and being in spirit, in physical, in mind, have been nurtured over time. And fortunately, there have been elders that have retained it and have now passed it on to other knuckleheads like me, who can now share it with you and others who are interested. This notion of in Hawaii, wherever you are, is part of our message today. So I'm going to have each of you, if you would mind, just in your own space and time, utter these sounds with me. Yeah. The first sound is ha, H-A, ha. Yeah. Express that ha. It comes from deep down between the heart and the lungs. It's letting the ha, the breath, come forward. So ha is the life-giving breath. That thing that we first get when we come to this island, this planet. It's the last thing you give back when you leave. And in between the first and last breath, you never own it. We share it. We nurture it. It nurtures us. This is that spirit. And it's in all things. All creatures, large and small. All plants, even those at the bottom of the sea. Right? Did you see recently where they're talking about the dark oxygen?
No.
That they've recognized this thing called dark oxygen that's coming from the bottom of the sea. So our perception of where this is, what this is, we're still learning. We're still babies. Anyway, the spiritual breath of ha that between us. In fact, sometimes when we damage that ha, the air between us, we say, let's clear the air between us. That's the ho'oponopono. Let's repair this atmosphere of friendship, of family, of companionship. It's in this space between us, yeah, the space between my fingers. The second element, or the second sound I'd ask you to utter is vai, W-A-I, with a V. Yeah. Vai. Vai is the word or term for sweet water, fresh water. But it is also the general larger term for fluidity, liquid. And when you double that, vai vai, that refers to anything of great value. Your life, for instance, vai vai, my children, vai vai, my wife, my family, my home, anything that's important to you is vai vai. Vai, that which flows. Our fresh water is vai, our salt water is kai. Vai and kai, feminine and masculine. It's about the balance of these things. And so you have the ha, the vai, the air and the water. Two elements that we cannot live without. Yeah. They're essential. They're essential to who we are. We are made up of water, which cannot be accessed without oxygen. And in that water is oxygen. So consequently, we are water and oxygen. Ha and vai, the last element I've already uttered once before, and that's the element, the spiritual identity of E. So everyone say E, the letter I. E. E is the creative energy, the he, she, the it, from which all of us descend, the source, if you would. And our principle understands that if you're connected to source, can there be scarcity? For in source is abundance. of whatever that might be, because it is the source of that abundance, that which we aspire to or need. Yeah. E is about the relationships that we hold with ourselves as well as others. So in the very name, Ha, Vai, E. Yeah. So ask each of you to utter that in that tempo. Ha, Vai, E. The air, the water, and the spirit. It's not car, house, bank account. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not cell phone, computer. Right? It's ha, vai, e. Because if I don't ha and I don't vai, I have no e, regardless of how good my internet connection might be. Yeah. So essentially, this is in Hawaii. The background you see is right out front of my home. This is where I do ceremony. Yeah. I'm in Hawaii, not on Hawaii. Yeah. I'm in Hawaii. I'm in the air. I'm in the water. I'm in the spirit. As you are, wherever you are in it as much as you are at it. You're not on it. As much as all of us are on island Earth, but living in its atmosphere of Ha, Vai, and E. Which says this: you don't have to come to the physical place that carries that name, Hawaii, to be Hawaii, to be Pono, to be Aloha. Because when you embrace the Ha, the Vai, and the E, wherever you are, honor that air, care for this relationship, maintain the atmosphere of peace, love, harmony, collaboration, forgiveness. Yeah. Be careful of what you serve others, the Vai, how you flow. When you feed mentally, spiritually, emotionally, you are sharing nutrition. How do you nutrify? Or are you one that takes? Do you enrich or do you diminish? This is the Vai, yeah. And honor your relationships. If you can honor the relationships of the trees, the animals, or even in an urban space, the space that you share with others, and you can enhance that Vai in that space of E. You may actually become much more Pono than you were yesterday, or even the last moment. Because what we're saying here is Pono is an inside job. Pono is Hawaii. Hawaii is Aloha. And so if you can Hawaii wherever you're in the world, you are Aloha. And when you become Aloha, you become Pono. It's a very difficult thing to be out of alignment when you are living in and being Aloha. Yeah. That said, we're all human. At least most of us, I think, yeah. Or hybrids. Well, that part of us that doesn't necessarily always maintain integrity. Pono is also a word for integrity. Is that when we find ourselves disintegrated and need to realign, we have a process. And the process is Ho'oponopono. Now, over the years, that process has rolled like an apple far from the tree and has picked up some worms in the process. Yeah. But if the process you're using is assisting you in getting in alignment, perfect, great. But what I'd like to share is that that process has been translated and shifted to meet the lenses of the places in which those apples may find themselves, which means at some point in time, the fruit no longer reflects the root. And so the whole Ho'oponopono process is like one of those apples. It's morphed, it's changed into other things, which is taken away from, in many ways, from the deeper meaning and spiritual principles to the mechanical and pragmatic principles, which may or may not be a bad thing if it does help you. But I'm finding that more and more people that have applied the mechanics don't understand the meaning, which they're looking for. And so I believe that's what Ryan is talking about or offering. If there are those who would truly like to understand and connect to the meaning that is embedded in the practice and the mechanics of Ho'oponopono, then there are means by which we can do that. And it's my intention here to offer that, should that be an invitation, right, or request. As Ryan knows, I don't go where I'm not invited. But I do extend an invitation to others and welcome the opportunity to share this if there's a genuine interest in acknowledging this deeper spiritual principle and connection to that thing that belongs to all of us, that is gifted to us by these elders. And in this case, Morrnah Simeona, she didn't do this for me. She didn't do this just for Hawaii. She did this for the world, to reframe our ancestral knowledge and wisdom in a way that we can apply it in a contemporary space. Yeah. So, Ryan, I may have just thrown up over everybody for the last few minutes, but that's kind of what came through. And it's telling me to ask a question or to stop for a second. If there are questions, yeah. But at any rate, so the principles and practices of Ho'oponopono, embedded in the cultural understanding of my relationship to spirit, right, is what these concepts are. So while there are practices that say and utter certain words, thank you, I love you, those are outcomes of when you actually apply the practice. Don't get me wrong. If that helps to reframe, refocus your attention away from pain, discomfort, and put you in a place that is no longer painful, great. But the question is, have we actually removed the underlying memory? Have we actually shifted and changed that thing that allows that experience to repeat itself? I can forgive this person, but tomorrow I have another person. Same thing. And I notice these constant things popping up in my life. Your last companion looks like your new companion, right? Your last job looks like a present job. The last home has the same termites you had when you moved from the last one, right? So there's a tendency we move from house to house and take our termites with us and then wonder why the house is filled with termites. Consider the spiritual termites in the memories that are embedded in the homes of our identities. Right? And when I transfer my software into the new hardware, have I eliminated the viruses that I picked up in the last rooms I visited? So we look at life in the same way, that if we're moving from room to room, vehicle to vehicle, space to space, time to time, how do we clean all that out so that when I see you the next time, it's fresh, it's clean, it's open? Yeah. Next time could be tomorrow. Next time could be 1,000 years. So I'll see you next time. Hopefully it'll be clear. Yeah. So I'll pause there, Ryan, in my valao, in my sharing. And mahalo all of you for the time.
Mahalo Kumu. If I don't know if Zoom would pick up the clap, but I want to do the pa'i kalima, but I don't know if it would pick it up.
We'll do that at the end. We get everybody do some mana. Yeah. Go ahead.
Pa'i kalima. Pa'i kalima.
3 claps.
Pa'i kalima.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, welcome.
I want to open it up for questions. I think 15 minutes feels like a good amount for questions. Someone already shared one in the chat, but in order to help me out, if you could do that Zoom thing where you raise your yellow hand, yeah. So the first question, which I'll be sharing from Lida, she said she doesn't have much of a voice right now because of a cold. So her question was, how can we acknowledge outer part/external chaos like wars, unstable governments, etc., without letting it derail our inner part/growth and focus?
That's a great question, and it's a great awareness. Yeah. It, whatever it is outside, is it. How we connect to it and how we define our relationship to it is what matters. Will I allow it to influence my feeling, my thoughts, right? So consider something that you place very little value on, right? Has very little meaning to you. I think each of us may have one or two of those things, and maybe even people, strangers. We have no idea who they are. And I want you to take yourself to that moment when you actually lay eyes on it. It happens to be sitting in the corner on the floor right now, right? Is it stimulating anything in you? Are you actually concerned about it and what it's about to do? Because it wants to do something. But because we don't have a relationship with it, we haven't connected with it, it's not really, it seems to have no meaning. It isn't until we give it meaning, take it into ourselves, and begin to make choices of which way or how we want to respond to it or react. There's a difference between response and reaction. That's all choice. I may not be choosing the behaviors of others, which I can't do anyway. I can't change their behavior, but I certainly can affect my own. How I respond to what I see out there as what we call war. Yeah. And the question is, where is the good? What good can I find? What good can I create from this? That is not acceptable, to be injuring people that way. Not in my book. So if that's the case, then do I run around being fearful of injuring people or being angry at others? Or can I adopt a way of being that creates harmony and does not injure people, or take up practices that do not facilitate ongoing injury? Oftentimes, that very thing in front of us is the message to us, and we are now grateful, as despicable as that may be out there. Because I just saw it, it's in me now, and I have an opportunity to change it. And if each and every one of us in this line decides to change it too, then we start changing that as well. This is not Pollyannish to think that these things aren't happening. But the question is, why are you seeing it? What's the opportunity for you now, right, to begin to shift that? Berating it, screaming at it, doesn't change it. Why? Because the effect is happening in here. It's not out there. It's in here. My anger, my fear, my anxiety, my aspirations, all of that's happening inside here, regardless of what's happening out there. It's just how I've now translated this, because there are people who enjoy firing guns. There are people that enjoy killing people. They're not seeing it the same way. They're experiencing their memory in a way that is different from our own. I have no control over their memory. What I have is control over my own. That's a choice. Yeah. These people are choosing that. I choose not to. And I pray for those who are injured by those choices. And I ask myself, why are we making this choice? What is it in me that's allowing me to see that behavior? When was it that I behaved that way? And I'm now witnessing what my behavior has created in the world around me. Please forgive me for that. And thank you for showing it to me, as I forgive you for becoming the teacher in my life now. See? That's Ho'oponopono. That's an alignment of me with it. I hope that makes sense. That just kind of came from somewhere. Denise, thank you for your hand.
Hey, Ramsey. I'm
Aloha.
wondering how does one start learning this and applying it daily? I mean, if this feels like the ultimate trauma healing technology that was gifted from above, from Morna and passed down to you. And I just like this is what the world needs right now. And I know I learned it from hearing a Ho'oponopono song, but that might not be the right way to learn. It's like that's what I knew. I got the words, I sing it. It makes me feel better, but I feel like I could go deeper. And what is the aligned way to learn this so that the transmission of the spirit of the teaching is intact and it's not culturally appropriated, it's not, it's not misused, it's not misinterpreted. Help me understand how to do this, and then pass it on to my children and their friends. And like, this is real technology for healing, right? And it's essentially free, or should be. So how do we do this?
That's right. Well, thank you for the question, the awareness, and being here. To your first question, how do you start? You already have. You sensed and felt a shift when you heard that song. Whether that's the appropriate or appropriated song or not, it was an energy and a vibration. It shifted you. And that shifted you into an awareness to see for the opportunity. How do I go deeper? Or you can just stay on the surface and walk by and just do that, right? So from a start standpoint, it's always like the old adage, the first step on any journey is that first step. You've taken more than one step. The real question is now the shift of focus, right? And commit yourself to a way of being so that your children and those around you, as we say in Hawaii, ikanana no ike, we learn by observing. We teach others how to treat us. If I don't treat the behavior, then I can't treat the child. See? An elder used to say, love the child, but fix and heal the behavior. My aloha and love for everyone is the same. It doesn't mean I agree with them. As I told my daughter once, I said, there will be times that you and I are going to have disagreement. I'm not going to be happy with your behavior, but I always love you. See? I may not love your behavior, but I love you. If we don't extend that sense of personal love for myself, then my children and those around me cannot begin to enjoy the same expression of love that I expect from them because I haven't demonstrated that to them. So whether you do the process of Ho'oponopono or not, when you start loving yourself and treating yourself in such a way that you are part of Source, that you're an extension of Source, then anything else is really an aberration, right? I'm missing it. I become disconnected. My anger, my fear is just a signal to me that I have somehow deviated from the core of Source. Because if I am in Source, I'm not angry that you ate more than I did. I'm not angry that because I know there's more. So what am I really upset at? That someone's not meeting my expectation. Does that make sense? That I want you to be a certain way, but you're not, because I think there isn't enough and you're taking more than you should. Isn't that why wars start? Fundamentally, it's that same thing. I want more than you are allowing me to have. You're taking more than I think you should. Fundamentally, it comes down to that, rather than saying everyone has exactly what they need. So it starts with us, and you've already taken that first step. Now, the process, you can learn the mechanics. That's just a class. But there are thousands of classes. The real question is, how many classes do I take and engage in? How many ceremonies do I go to before I start doing it and being it? That's fundamentally it. This isn't a one-off. Because I have it consciously now doesn't mean I understand it physically, that I haven't manifested it in the world, right? So the acknowledgement that you're existing is, how do you do that? You start, you're just by doing it. And now that you acknowledge it, you can begin to deepen and say that and understand that the eha, the disconnect that you're having, is an internal one. And that your children, your spouse, everyone around you is triggering you and teaching you. They are our teachers. Right? As the old adage, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And oftentimes the teacher is the student. And we need to get into that humility of understanding that, the ha-aha. That yes, I may have these gifts, but the intelligence is coming from that child. The intelligence is coming from that tree. The intelligence is coming from the animal. And before we start destroying the library of intelligence, that we should rethink, where is that intelligence? See, just that shift alone creates a new vibration. And that new vibration embraces and invites greater vibration. Right now, the vibration in the world for many is entropic. It's really deteriorating. And we're allowing it to be because that's nature, physics. Everything's in entropy. And until I get into the right inertia to keep it rising and keep pushing it up. So the spiritual inertia here is, how do I keep lifting? And you don't lift by looking down. When things look down, look up. And the object here is, we need to look up. Look up to a source that is greater than ourselves, that we actually come from, that we're all part of. And anytime we feel this it's the anxiety, we've actually stepped away from it. Yeah. So my simple recognition, Denise, easier said than done, is to step into it. Right? Step into it and welcome it. And I believe we're here today, all of us, because you and others have stepped into it. Right.
Aloha. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
So,
is there someone else?
Yeah, there are a couple questions in the chat that I think relate a little bit to what Denise asked, which is, can you share something about what it takes practically to get introduced and learn Ho'oponopono? Which basically, if I could, from where I'm sitting, what you've just said, this is the introduction, right? This is the introduction. Then there was a magnetism that pulled people into wanting to be introduced and learn more. So for Patrick's question, can you share something about what it takes practically to get introduced and learn Ho'oponopono? So, Kumu, if I could just take this one briefly and then fill me in wherever.
Yeah.
This call in particular, it's impossible to learn Ho'oponopono in one call. So what this call was to do is to act as a magnet to bring people in who, like Kumu said, have already started. They've already felt the call, the kahea, as he said earlier, right? When you saw the Hawai'i within, or either when you saw his face or you heard the song, Denise, or whatever happened, there was already something pulling on that memory, right? So this call was to kind of gather us here so that we could begin the journey together, because it's not possible to do it in a 1 hour call. So as far as getting deeper into this, Patrick, which is what I think you're kind of alluding to, like, how do I actually begin to implement this in my life on a daily basis? Maybe how I can continue to learn deeper into the mechanics and the meaning. This was a call to kind of introduce and bring Kumu into the space with everybody, so then we can kind of decide how to weave this forward so that we can learn together over time deeper into this in an embodied and then conceptual way, simultaneously, concurrently, like that. I hope that answers your question, Patrick. But Kumu, do you want to add anything to what I just shared?
No, I think you're spot on. Like anything else, always consider the source. For instance, when I'm in the middle of the country, in this case, the continental US, in a mountainous region, I'm not as confident about the seafood joint as I am when I'm on the coast. Right? In order for me to get fresh seafood in the middle of the country, it requires that food to move at great distances through many hands versus coming straight from source. So consider source. Whenever you're learning or when you're connecting with someone, how close to source are they? Or are they representative of a apple that's rolled too far from the tree? Or maybe it's just a natural flavor. Right? It's a substitute. Now, mind you, in my analogy, I'm not making a judgment about the people, because many of us are well-intended, right? We want to do these good things. But when we don't understand, because we haven't lived or been with source to learn that, ironically, we tend to put our own stuff in it. So what I've learned and experienced is the people out there now teaching Ho'oponopono aren't even pronouncing it properly. That kind of gives you a hint. Yeah. Ho'oponopono. Right. Ho-no-no-no-no-no. Right. And they're supposed to be, yeah, there's a no-no in there. I think you heard it. That's all my recommendation to anybody in any sort, in any function, is try to get as close to source as possible. Well, ironically, Ho'oponopono is about source. Right? So how do you step into it? Find a source. And in this case, it could be me, but there are a few others that actually learned, mentored with kupuna and elders. Now, mind you, ho'oponopono is a word that has many meanings. There are particular practices that are in disciplines that are specific. So don't be confused by the word. What we're looking for is the practice. What I can commit to you is that the practice that I'm sharing comes from that source. Aunty Morrnah Nalamaku Simeona. And I got the bruises to show it too, right? But I support anyone else that is on the journey to bring peace, harmony, and identity forward again, so we can connect that. So Ryan, the best offering I can do is that we create that space, they create that time for people that want to do it. And to Denise's point, it should be free. So people don't pay me for Ho'oponopono. But what they are doing is the opportunity cost of me spending time with them versus my granddaughter. Right? So that's a distinction for me. That if it's not here, then I'm somewhere else feeding them and finding ways to feed them. So there is never a time that I ever sell spirit. Right? This isn't what this is about. It's not about the money, but it's the opportunity cost of being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Yeah. Hopefully that makes some sense. Yeah. But yeah, I'm committed. If you are, Ryan, if people are interested, we can create that space probably sooner than later.
Okay.
Because I think we're going into a time where there's a lot of opportunity for definitions to create discomfort, dis-ease. I think it'd be nice to have a different filter and lens to see it through.
Yeah, I agree. So for those who are interested in continuing the learning, is everyone on this call on the WhatsApp group, or at least one of the WhatsApp groups? Mihai, maybe there's a couple different ones.
Yeah, I posted this in several groups, but I will post now in the chat the link to the WhatsApp group of this.
Okay, great. So for those of you who are on it, you're on it. For those of you who aren't, it looks like you'll be able to join via the link that Mihai is going to post in the chat. And from that point, Kumu and I will then be presenting something as he shared for those who want to continue this learning deeper, because as this was just an introduction call, just an introduction call, getting us resituated and reassociated with the contextual relevance of the content rather than just, as Kumu mentioned, the pragmatic outcome of the process. So yeah, we can.
And Brian, feel free to share either the webpage or Way of Aloha
For sure.
link that they can send questions to. But I'd rather centralize it so that it's a single source, but there are ways that they can communicate and get more information about it. But
Yes.
I'd like to, Mihai, work with you if we can, so that we focus the opportunity here.
Great. So we'll be able to share those links in that same group. And I also just want to, Curtis has a quick question, but I also would love if you, or I could bring up, but there's also a really deep connection, what he's shared, and if you've picked up on it, Ho'oponopono Aloha, and then Aloha in the kingdom of Hawaii, not the state of Hawaii. And there is something else here that after Curtis's question, I would love to just give you a little space to dive into that. And then I think we'll kind of see our way off the call within like a few minutes. So,
sure. Thank you. I want to everyone's time.
Curtis,
you had a question.
My name is Amy. I just apologize. I missed some of the definitions you were explaining for Hawai'i, and if there was a place that I could refer back to those terms, I just didn't want to miss those. And if that's in the WhatsApp, I will ask there instead. So I didn't want to waste anyone else's time.
Yeah, actually, if you want to, thank you. If you want to, you can go to YouTube and Google Kumu Ramsay speaks about the meaning of Hawaii, something like that. Kumu Ramsay speaks the definition of Hawai'i. And
you can add that to the group too.
Yeah, someone captured that several years ago. And so it's out there. he can pick it up.
Yeah, and then as far as the other terms, which maybe you're referring to as well, Amy, like kind of like the various different Hawaiian words that he's kind of put in as he's been speaking, there is in the deeper process, which would envelop through the learning journey that would come from here, a glossary of the specific words that come into play within that, so that we can begin to work with the Mo'olelo Hawai'i in the process. And that's a continual, deeply contextual rootedness that we should be working with the language of the practice, of the technique, of the protocol, of the life way to then, go about it like that. So
Perfect. That was actually what I was looking for. I was, it seems very spiritual, and I didn't want to mix it up and use the wrong terms for them. So that was what I was looking for. Thank you.
yeah, I think as long as you don't call it ho'oponopono, at least for now, we're on good footing. And
Oh,
so I just want to give, there's 4 minutes left, Kumu. I think that should be good. If and anyone who has to hop, I think people have started to, but yeah, kind of as you've mentioned and weaved in here, but in a deeper context, ho'oponopono aloha. Aloha is Hawaii. Hawaii is aloha. Kingdom of Hawaii, not the state of Hawaii. I think it's important just to give people that, kind of leave them with this, because this is also a really key part of this entire journey. And one
yeah,
of the things that I've learned from Kumu is there's a difference between content and context. And the more that we absorb content without context, things are disassociated and unrooted. And this is
right.
part of why we're kind of progressing this way as a collective. So I just want to give you that space to bridge that connection.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ryan. I'm going to assume that most here are resonate with the notion of frequency, right? But that there's something higher than us, that we're all moving into dimensional spaces, and can appreciate the notion of the fabric of time and space. So in 1893, I believe that fabric of time and space was damaged through the act of what we now understand was the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom, or the Kingdom of Hawaii, which is a neutral country, one of the only 5 countries in the world, nation state, by the way, that had a written constitution. So the King Kamehameha III back in 1840 actually produced one of the only 5 constitution governments there were in the world at the time. Very progressive, right? But it was a neutral, peaceful nation that came out of war, conquest, and battles. But fundamentally in 1840, under King Kamehameha III, the constitutional monarchy, the Hawaiian kingdom was created. In 1893, that was overthrown by the support and participation of American businessmen and the United States Navy and Marines. And consequently, Hawaii, which many know as a state, has continued to be occupied for the last 132 years, which most people don't know, thinking that Hawaii was actually annexed and became part of the United States, when in actuality it never happened. And so the external reality is that the Hawaiian kingdom sovereignty has been usurped. What does that mean on a larger scale? Well, it's hard to find harmony, to your point, externally, when we're having discomfort internally. So the Ho'oponopono that we're doing today is not just but it's how do we get back to center, and how do we restore and heal and bring order back to that fabric of time and space? Because I think as Hawaii heals, the world heals. All of us heal. Because I think in that energetic principle, everything has been operating in a short-circuited manner ever since. And so this isn't specifically about restoring a king, a queen, a government. This is about restoring order, to make pono, to make right again. And I think once that occurs, and as we move there, we begin to sense that shift, which I think Denise was talking about, or someone asked, why are we seeing these wars and these discomforts? Well, there's a tear in the time of space, the fabric of time and space. That energy has been disrupted, and how do we restore that energy? By each of us restoring the energy within us. Right? So the Kingdom of Hawaii is, and I'm working diligently with the royal family to restore the dignity of that, but also recognize in truth, what are we talking about? And if we're operating off of a falsehood, then it's hard to make things pono, because the definition is already false. And so this is about a search for truth, which I think Ho'oponopono is, that each of us is searching for true identity of who we are, in relationship to the family around us. And one of our family members is in disarray, discord, and it's been that way for 132 years. Time being what it is. How do we move forward? And so part of that is that. So thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up, because that is also one of the places that I'm placing my energy, is to help to restore that order.
Yeah.
And anyone that's interested can write to me, and I can engage them more.
Yeah.
I know we're at the top of the hour, but Georgetta, your hand came up, and is that okay, Ryan? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And people, please feel free to jump off if you want, but I do want to do a closing. Georgetta.
Hi, thank you so much. Sorry for being a bit slow. I just have this question for you. It came from the very bottom. How do you? So I resonate very much with what you said. I also find that you're talking about things that, I don't know, maybe are common in the way people approach these things across cultures. And I was wondering, how do you practice this in such a way that it does not, I don't know, end up taking over your life? Because, speaking from experience, I was in a position where, let's say, I felt that I couldn't continue unless I took care of some forgiving. But in order to forgive, I had to, dig, and then I had to take care not to blame someone for the things I had to forgive. It was, I don't know, very sensitive, but then it ends up taking so much of your life. So how do you do it without overwhelming you, I think?
Well, interesting, like they say, the answer to every question is in the question. Right. And so it is about just doing it daily in a way that doesn't overwhelm your life. Now you say, okay, Kumu, that's one of those Zen answers. In reality is breathing is an effect that if you focused on breathing, it could take over your life. Right. If you're looking at the mechanics of breathing every moment and counting every breath, holding every breath, right? Or opening your eye and looking at everything you do in life could overwhelm your life, because it becomes a thinking mechanical thing rather than a natural spiritual thing. So when you adopt a way of being which identifies and says, I forgive you, I love you, right? But I'm now going to deal with the impact of what you just said or done. That's separating, right? And you make that part of your life. No more than eating, cooking, cleaning can overwhelm your life if that becomes a focus, the only focus. So when you adopt a way of being where forgiveness as well as alignment is just the way you are, then it becomes your life. My life is living in harmony. That's the aspiration. Now, mind you, I may be aware, but I'm not immune. So consequently, I have to do it. But fortunately, I have a process, a practice that is deeply embedded in who I am and what I do. And I'm not saying it's easy, but once you get to there, it's as easy or difficult as breathing. Right.
All right.
So
thank you.
it's just a matter of doing it. And once you understand it and practicing it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Brian, I want to honor everyone's time. If there is a really hot question that we have to answer, I know Curtis, you had a hand up again, but I hope we were able to answer that. Okay, great. Mihai, thank you for this time and space and allowing us to reach out and respond to those calls for clarity. Brian? So with that, from my ancestors to yours, from my descendants to yours. Mahalo. Aloha. Be well, and hopefully we'll spend some time together again soon and learn some of the things and go a little bit deeper. Ryan, so I'll leave that with you.
Mahalo, Kumu. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody for being on the call, and hopefully everyone has that link. Kumu, you can feel free to hop off if you need.
Okay, thank you. Ahoy ho, everyone. Be well. Have a wonderful week, day, year, life.
Aloha.
Aloha.